but my foundations is spiritual direction
Hmm.
and care. The purpose is how to be present in life and to nurture someone's spiritual freedom. And it's with the intent of deeply listening and create an intentional space to see the movement of spirit, see the movement of the universe and the movements of where your intuition is going. And you develop practices around it that you co-create with the director. Action can be a part of it, but the baseline is deep noticing and listening to the movement of spirit and naming your experience with that. How can I listen to spirit's direction on this topic or my own direction on this topic? Coaching, counseling, therapy, or consulting are not there to tell you what to do, but particularly spiritual direction that is not about telling you what to do. Truth telling can be a part of it, but that's not really it. Spiritual direction is moving with learning to be with intuition. It's just in the ebbs and flows of things. You are learning and you're learning the spirit's language. You learn your own language with it, but I'm not monitoring you. So you're just journeying along, just learning their relationship with the language and the presence of spirit.
Hello, and welcome back to the Cycle Starters podcast. I'm your host, Heather, and today I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Xeres Villanueva. Xeres is a community organizer, spiritual activist, and cultural change worker whose healing work spans mental health advocacy, social entrepreneurship, and the arts. Their work sits at the intersection of spirituality, healing, and justice, and they have partnered with organizations like Inside Out Community Arts, We Empowerment Center, and Interfaith United for Justice and Peace. In today's conversation, we're exploring what it means to start new cycles in our lineages, how ancestral healing shows up in real life, and what it can look like to do transformational work that is both spiritually grounded and rooted in collective liberation. Also, if you are enjoying the content that we are creating here on the Cycle Starters podcast, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. It really helps the algorithm get our episodes in front of more viewers. Thank you in advance for the support. I really appreciate it. Also, if you have not subscribed to my Substack publication, The Cycle Architect, please do so. The link is in the comments below. I have different tiers of membership on Substack. The highest tier membership is the Cosmic Awakening Circle. So if you'd like to be in community with other cycle starters, that's the place to be. So that's the Cycle Architect on Substack. So without further ado, let's welcome Xeres to the show. Hi, sis.
Thank you, Heather. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for offering this.
Oh my gosh, no problem at all. And I'm really honored to have you on the show. So thank you for saying yes to being in dialogue with me.
Thank you.
Well, so let's start with your blood ancestors. What can you share with us about your blood ancestry?
Both of my parents are from the Philippines in Angeles City, a Pampanga region. My maternal side is primarily Pampangan, Chinese, and Spaniard on that side of the fence. And my paternal, my father, is predominantly Tagalog and Pampangan with Chinese influence as well. Mostly because I went through an ancestral history journey last year with someone who is in the Philippines, who is also a healer, an activist and healer, and anthropological background, and did Papangan culture, and mostly the history of the region, the culture of the region, and the current development. But it gave us well aspects of like each side of the family and their parents, and it gave an insight. This Pampanga before Spanish came, basically, it's one of the much larger kingdom with alliance with other kingdoms and trading with a lot of Asian countries, even as far as Brunei. I'm not pronouncing this correctly, but as far as Indonesia, Malaysia, and China, and then there's stories of even military doing expositions with them. So it's very well known to have a trading network, a lot of labor and diplomacy, and also warriorship in Pampanga. It's not just known to be the food capital for those who are not in the Philippines.
Thank you for educating us on Pampanga. I mean, the history of the archipelago, now known as the Philippines, is so interesting. I'm still learning. There are over 7,000 islands in the Philippines. I didn't realize that until I went a few months ago. So many different indigenous groups, so much mixing of DNA there. And I have to mention that Miss Pampanga just won Miss Supranational as part of the Miss Universe Philippines organization. So she was in the top 7 for Miss Universe. Bea Milian Wendorsky, who is a Philam, she's Filipino and American, she won Miss Universe, but Miss Pampanga, who was gorgeous. I told you she won Miss Supranational. And so she's going to be competing
I'm excited.
internationally, representing the Philippines. So go Allison Hetland. So definitely check her out. So thank you so much for sharing with us about the history of Pampanga. And my next question for you is around ancestral healing. So, when did the concept of ancestral healing enter your consciousness? And this is sort of a two-part question because I want to know, when did you realize that patterns could be passed down from generation to generation? But then also, when did you become empowered around it? Okay, this is what I've inherited, but this doesn't have to be my destiny. This isn't inevitable. I can change these cycles. I can start new cycles. So, yeah, kind of a two-part question there.
Ooh, this can go many tangents in both of these questions. I was born into a cycle breaker. A parent, which is my mother, had to, mostly because there was always friction in that family's many things, and some of it is still shuttered in mystery. Hence the reason I did the history, not just going to family and ancestral constellations, but also last year with someone who actually, does support people finding about their family regions and the cultural regions and the context of their parents, and I can say that it really is more me recognizing that I'm different from the rest of the family members, how my mother is different from the rest of them, that we shared it and we shared gifts, and then things happen in the family disputes, people dealing with complicated things between parents and children, custody between parents and children, that revealed that, oh, our family's handling of conflict sucked. And that's to put it politely. And I mean, a lot of them don't get along, truthfully, since I was a teenager. And the reason I'm here is mostly because there's not a lot of support for autistic kids, and especially for a girl. And even then, it's like, don't know how I can help you other than special ed or compromising without special ed. So it really just starts with knowing that I was different. It's this kind of having a good life, but it actually makes it freer to feel the pain of all the generational on top of dealing with being bullied at school throughout middle school. So that's where it began. And also dealing with noticeable patterns like how between me, my sister, and I don't necessarily date a lot of good men in our life. I had a good father, even though they're divorced. It came to a halt when my grandmother passed away in 2014, 15. That's like 3 or 4 years before Saturn returned, and died after 5 years of dealing with renal failure and dialysis, and had to come here for treatment. And part of that is because that's the long-term effect of undealt with high blood pressure, which dealt with not taking medication because when she was here, fought. My mom and her fought, and that led to me writing to write about generational healing versus overgiving. And then another article I wrote 3 to 4 years after is about intergenerational conflict and the pain of that and working through that. And of course, the magazine subject was on the conflict that's happening. And of course, that's intergenerational conflict. So I wrote an article on that. So it wasn't like ancestral healing per se, but it led to a point where I just want to beat my own drum at some point. And how I ended up being empowered, it was mostly meeting other cycle breakers without knowing them, seeing the challenges of breaking them themselves. And I'm kind of a second gen. And seeing my mother developing chronic illness. And I was a liberationist Christian activist with a powerful minister and feminist who I was interning under for leadership development and learning cross cultural ministry. Wrote her journey as a Korean American, first pastor, first woman of color in the seminary, taught us about generational healing, starting with little genealogy, and then you mark those genealogies, what kind of relationships they had, not just the squares and the titles and the buttons. And reading that during our sessions, because we meet in person every week to debrief our intern assignment at a church of other people of color. In this case, I was interning at a black church at the time in Wallen Hills, and we're briefing, and and that's how we end up discussing the intergenerational healing. And when I read it, and then we had to pick a song that relates to that I end up crying about the song called "You Are So Beautiful" song, or "You Are a Miracle So Beautiful," and I forgot the title, but that's when I'm like, I can feel it now. I'm like, this is there. So that's that point with a mentor of a woman of color trailblazer who did not have the easiest time being a progressive minister as a Korean woman, to show this kind of self-development and mystical and scholarship to us, for thinking, was pretty powerful. That's what it began now to see as an empowerment. And from there, I encountered many, many other contexts of different ways of doing healing. And it started with mostly organizational and community development trainings that I've been to that were also initiated under spiritual traditions, not just Christians, also by indigenous. It's not just talking about generational traumas. I gotta understand myself and who my people are. So that's a long-winded answer. Let's start out with, I don't understand why are so awful, and why we have a lot of money and we're still awful, or a lot of internalized, self-hate, either self-hatred or the unwarranted nationalism. That's like a pedalization, and I don't understand why you have to put the pecking order, but then you don't even respect the hierarchy in places that are established, and then that meeting people of color and even white allies that do the work of ancestral healing, gave me context to like, oh, this is bigger than myself.
Thank you for sharing all of that. Well, so I heard you say overgiving. I heard you mention chronic illness. What, if you had to put a fine point on it, are the patterns that you are breaking in this lifetime?
I think the patterns of breaking, it's really through my mom, who's not at the age to really integrate at this point, and even my father in his own way, who I'm very fortunate to have. And that's a privilege not a lot of people have, regardless for a lot of us, but I do, and I'm grateful. That's its own pattern because not a lot of people have it. I can say that I know I am loved, accepted by my parents. I'm not accepted a lot by the world for many reasons.
Mhm.
But I
Mhm.
know I can say that even though they don't see me 100%, I know that I don't ever doubt even what they're going through.
Mhm.
Even they weren't always the best at some points of my life. I can say that I don't have to wonder, because my mother always wondered if her mother loved her. And my father, respect my father at the end of his life, but what he's been through, even though he grew up with a family of attorneys, father was attorney, originally worked at the base and then moved up to work attorney with my paternal grandfather to work in his brother's law firm. He wasn't always happy. And he tries to seek happiness in other ways while trying to provide 7 children, which doesn't make him in and out, even though he tries to be there. It was his mother who always tries to be there, but the emptiness wasn't what the the dissatisfaction wasn't quelled in his lifetime.
Do you feel like you're breaking a pattern by doing the work that you do
Yes,
in public? Can you talk more about that?
it's more like choosing my spiritual gifts and not just obviously advocating for justice, but I'm also thinking what kind of way of disruption and world building creates a history. This is a recent thing I'm doing, being a cultural architect and a history maker. And I'm free to ponder those questions to actually help people implement that reflection because that's not free to do so, even if they have the money and luxury. Because of, once again, even as my father's family proves it, and although they've been a loving family, like that short-term and long-term social change and personal change is not always on the back of their heads, even for short-term things. And now I'm here to be like, we can do beds and roses because I'm realizing that justice needs to be funded differently. The legacy of spiritual martyrdom did it. It's always stories about, Oscar Marrero standing up against the Salvadorian army because we spiritually look up to him. He was taken out, by the powers that be. Yeah, eh, for spiritually and spiritually defying what's happening. And I'm now adding mental health, emotional well-being, and now intentional leadership intelligence and multidimensional planetary wealth along with collective liberation. We can start creating uh the life that we loved as a form of justice. Not
Beautiful.
just always be defined by creating wealth to run away from poverty, run away from power because you see it abused so much or see you always being the prey of it. You could reimagine a way where you can create the life and world that you love and your own trajectories. That's what I want to break, is that you don't have to uh make being at the mercy of it be the only thing, or be by yourself the only one creating the difference either. You can call in different trajectories that can be made now and not have to die before that ever came, or be sick.
All right. Well, so your work, I want to unpack a little bit because from what I understand, it's different from coaching, right? The support that you offer. So, what makes spiritual direction and accompaniment different from coaching, counseling, or therapy?
I do coaching, but my foundations is spiritual direction
Hmm.
and care. Christian mystic tradition, just even more amplified by Jesuit spirituality. But the purpose is how to be present in life and to nurture someone's spiritual freedom. And it's with the intent of deeply listening and create an intentional space to see the movement of spirit, see the movement of the universe and the movements of where your intuition is going, kind of thing. And you develop practices around it that you co-create with the director. And the point you do it with, that you're rebuilding your ability to discern and be with, which requires not a lot of intentional action. Action can be a part of it, but the baseline is that you are intentionally learning deep noticing and listening to the movement of spirit and naming your experience with that and also what you notice, which can lead to a couple different directions, which is why a lot of times you just let it run, unfurl. I call the spiritual synchronicity shit that happens. But it's not just simply folk wisdom, although folk wisdom is important and it can be, but at heart is the movement of spirit. How can I notice the movement of spirit? Or when I am wanting to explore, how can I listen to spirit's direction on this topic or my own direction on this topic? I'm a director, but it's a form of decolonization. Coaching, counseling, therapy, or consulting are not there to tell you what to do. Even advisement isn't reduced to telling what to do. Different consultations, different types of space holding, but particularly spiritual direction that is not about telling you what to do. Truth telling can be a part of it, but that's not really it. especially the spiritual direction. It is learning to be with intuition, and just in the ebbs and flows of things, in what you are learning, and you're learning the spirit's language. You learn your own language with it, which is why there's a lot of us deeply listening, but I'm not monitoring. Coaching requires accountability, but even then, it's not like that. It's it for practicing the deep listening, really learning and understanding and honoring the language of spirit communicating with you. That's really the purpose. That's noticing, discernment, mirroring and reflecting, a lot of affirming the presence of spirit, as well as noticing the absence. So that is spiritual direction accompaniment. So you're just journeying along, learning their relationship with the language and the presence of spirit.
It makes so much sense in the world that you're doing this work because your astrology chart has this written all over it. And you have a stellium in the 12th house. You know this, right? So, including your sun, right? Your sun conjunct Neptune in Capricorn in the 12th house. So, the veil is very thin for you. So, I love that you've said yes to your divine assignment here. Are you ready to transition into some galactic astrology, my friend?
I'd be more than happy to. I'm
Amazing.
curious about what other things the stars and the planets has said.
Okay, amazing. So, in addition to being the host of the Cycle Starters podcast, I am a quantum soul guidance galactic astrology practitioner. And so I give all sorts of readings. If you would like to look at your galactic placements, you can go to galacticastrochart.com for free and you can pull a report. If you want some help interpreting them, if you would like to receive insights around what things mean, what things are, that's when you would book a reading with me at heatherrebeccawilson.com. And like I said, I have different offerings. So what galactic astrology is and why it was so appealing to me really has to do with expanding our notion of ancestors beyond blood ancestors and into our star ancestry. So, galactic astrology adds an outer layer of fixed stars and nebulas and supercosmic points to the traditional tropical Western natal chart to illuminate our soul's journey over eons of time. So we're looking at past lives not only on Earth, but past lives that are off planet. And I really feel strongly that part of my work as a cycle breaker and a cycle starter is to support people and expanding into their multidimensional galactic selves. So it was really fun to give you a reading, Saris. And what I want to do today is dive deeper into something that I don't think I got into during your reading. So, for folks out there who are curious about your big three, you are an Aquarius rising, you're a Capricorn sun, and you are an Aries moon. So, yeah, you've got fire, you've got earth, and you have air in your big three. So you're pretty balanced. And like I said, you have a 12th house stellium. So that means a cluster of 3 planets or points or more in a house or a sign. And this stellium of yours is in the 12th house of the unseen. So, hello, you're doing this spiritual direction work. I love it. The veil is super thin for you. So, what I wanted to share with you is that I thought it was really interesting that your midheaven, which is what you do in public, your career, your contributions, was conjunct your Pluto in the sign of Scorpio. Okay. So they're almost like blended together into one force, which is really interesting. So, with the midheaven and Pluto in Scorpio conjunct the fixed star Crux, a Crux, in the 10th house of, what we do professionally, like I said, our contributions, this is the kind of placement you feel in someone's presence. So, your midheaven represents your public path, your calling, the legacy that you came here to leave behind. And Pluto, the planet of just deep transformation, right? Death and rebirth, digging up what we don't want others to see. Pluto intensifies and transforms anything that it touches. And a crux, carries frequencies connected to mysticism, spiritual depth, intuition, esoteric wisdom, and the ability to navigate darkness without losing connection to the sacred. When all of this comes together in the sign of Scorpio, which is the sign of death and rebirth and transformation, shadow work and power and regeneration, it creates a signature of someone who is not here for surface level change. You are here for real transformation, not performative healing, not spiritual bypassing, not aesthetics without substance. Your chart carries the energy of someone who is willing to go into the underworld psychologically, spiritually, culturally, even systemically, and bring back truth, healing, and consciousness from those depths. And what feels especially important is that this is happening in your 10th house of your public impact and contribution. So this isn't just personal for you. Your transformational work is meant to ripple outwards into communities, into systems, and collective spaces, which makes so much sense given your work in organizing, justice, healing, advocacy, spirituality, and culture change. So, this placement actually shows up often in people who become powerful guides during times of collective transition. We are in that period of time right now. People who can hold intensity without collapsing under it. There's this ability to sit with grief, to sit with trauma, rage, power dynamics, and rebirth while still staying connected to compassion and purpose. And because Pluto is here, your life itself may have required multiple reinventions, periods where old identities had to die so something more authentic could emerge. But I think the deeper gift of this placement for you is that every time you walk through your own transformation, you become even more capable of guiding others through theirs. And this fixed star, Crux a Crux, adds this profoundly intuitive and spiritual dimension to all of this. There's almost an initiatory quality to your work and your presence. And people may find themselves revealing truths around you that they didn't even expect to say out loud, because you create spaces where hidden things can finally come to light. And ultimately, Xeres, I feel this placement speaks to someone who is here to become a kind of spiritual alchemist, someone who transforms pain into wisdom, crisis into consciousness, and endings into portals for collective rebirth. Your chart says that your power doesn't come from avoiding darkness. It comes from learning to carry light through it. So, how is this landing? How do you feel hearing all of this?
I mean, we got different readings from different charts over the years, not just astrology. Even I look up some aspects of Mayan astrology. It's all a lot of leadership things. It's also experiences of me like feeling unseen, right? I could say that there's just lots of lived experiences of the contradictions. I've been freelancing for a long time because when I graduated, the only fortune thing I have is community and family that carried through working as a mostly freelancer throughout most of my life. It just makes me the more adult millennial, either the binary of either corporate boss, girl boss, which is co-opted. Girls used to mean something more empowering than just working corporate, to trad wives. I didn't have that. I try to stay within my passion in things, and I did these free internship things, approximately to power, which I learned now that proximity doesn't mean your people recognize your authority. I got was internship at a PR firm, like a local boutique PR firm, like that was run by a former like rock journalist and a person who was starting her own PR firm division while working for that PR firm for artists. Like lots of like cutting edge people nearby me. who have also issues of power while trying to advocate for things. Like, it's very weird. Like, pioneers are usually people like that, and having that proximity mostly as a role of a marketing or admin assistant. Due to the work with Asian community organizers, I was able to get into a leadership training of Asian American civil engagement. And it's common for like some people from different sectors, like the public sector, the business sector, the profit sector, and the people within a lot of it had community coming in, not just professors. Like, when I'm hearing that, I'm trying to contextualize this power. I don't know if I can articulate them, but it's wild. And it's like, there's so many layers of caste systems and hierarchies that I'm navigating.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do with it. So,
Thank you for sharing that reflection. This plutonic influence in your 10th house of career, I can see how it's been intense for you, how it's been complicated, how there have been weird power dynamics to navigate in these situations. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Well, so, Saris, if people want to work with you, if they want to find out more about you, where should they go to learn more?
all right, now I'm currently offering one-off sessions because I'm in the foundation of rebuilding and rebranding my business at the moment.
Hmm.
I'm open for long-term spiritual direction, just monthly, and you can schedule a free inquiry session if that works for you. And I also am recently a Reiki healing practitioner. I also offer distant healing. So if you want long-term, you can have monthly long-term coaching, long-term spiritual direction, or long-term Reiki sessions monthly to twice a month at the moment. So you can schedule an inquiry to see what are your goals with that. Because ultimately what I am eventually focused is ancestral and lineage pioneers and liberators who want to work with their zone of genius, really, but they're developing the leadership and spiritual fortitude and reconnecting their own unique relationship to their culture and ancestry to start doing that. And if you want to start with more like just getting to connected with yourself as the first step, because I know that to just start with just reconnecting with yourself and your own energy, your personal and spiritual liberation and freedom. Yeah, spiritual direction would be good to start to just get to the habit of doing that. So I'm
Great.
available for that.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Well, I have one last question for you that I ask of all of my guests. What are the new cycles that you are starting in your lineages?
Moving forward, the new cycle is that I can create a way to be fully here in this world without making myself a human sacrifice. Which means I'm learning over functioning, under functioning does to cope with the fact that you just not comfortable be who you are here. Is it okay to be fully home and fully here without finding yourself becoming a human sacrifice to something?
Very powerful. Saris, thank you so much for saying yes to being in dialogue with me on the show. It's been an honor to have you here. Thank you so much.
It's an honor here too. I appreciate it.
Yay. Good. All right. Well, thanks everyone. We will see you next time on the Cycle Starters podcast. Take care. Bye, everybody. Bye, Saris.